I've been practicing ceramics since 2018.
Wow.
I took a course at a studio in Brooklyn. That's where I used to live. I came out here around the pandemic to our summer home in Mastic Beach. That's really when I was able to start FemSoul as a business and also practice my craft. So I have a kiln. I actually have two kilns, electric kilns, and then I have one raku kiln that fires outside. And in this process that's over here that has like a lot more of the smoky and metallic luster effect. And that's like a really dramatic firing process. It's a lot of fun and not much control, and so that's why creating in this process is really addictive, because you really just never know what you're going to get. There's these cool like copper metallic lusters that happen and occur in the reduction of oxygen in the reduction chamber, which is basically filled with dried leaves from my yard.
Very organic.
Yeah, really organic. What's like really signature of my work is you'll see a lot of texture with the nude stoneware that's unglazed, and it's applied in a variety of ways, whether it's on an organic form or these curvy forms that are thrown on the pottery wheel, and in a variety of clay bodies. So like an iron speckled clay, and then we have a white stoneware with the white crawl on it. Just has like a really nice textural appeal. And the way it's applied is it's applied in a way so that it follows the curve of the vessel. So you really get basically like a vase on top of the vase. And I also teach. I teach locally in my home studio privately, but then also at the Clay Art Guild in Southampton. It's a great way to stay connected with the community and build community and also share what I'm so passionate about.
Yes,
so
that's wonderful. Very good.
yeah, and there's definitely a growing interest in things that are handmade, and especially handmade ceramics. It's such a tactile medium, and you really get to dive in and, meditate while creating.
So, since I could hold a crayon, really, my grandma was a professional artist out on the East End, and she would take me with her to her art groups, her sketch clubs, and her guild. She belonged to an artist guild. But I never really pursued it full time until the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, I set up my studio and really focused on. I always did it part-time as a side, managing my brother's bar, and I always did it on the side, but I had a very bad car accident. So I decided to just focus on the art studio. So here I am, and I'll be in the Hamptons Fine Art Fair next week. And I just got my first full-length feature, Pepper Magazine, it's arts and culture. But I just got my first feature full-length article in a arts publication. So I'm really excited about that. And I just booked a solo show with the gallery that's representing me for the Hamptons Fine Art Fair. Been showing on the Lower East Side a little bit, just kind of seeing where things go. A couple of different series I'm working on, they're all starting to blend, but I'm a communications major, so I lived on the West Coast for a long time, and I did a lot of bands, promotions, California, Las Vegas. And music is definitely a huge influence for me throughout my work. I do a lot of pop art, and I also do figurative work, but I'm doing a You Are Being Deleted series right now with all the AI that's coming out. People are having a hard time, figuring out what's real, what's virtual, and I think it's only going to get more so. So a lot of the stuff I'm focusing on light and shapes and blurry images and just exciting things coming through.
So I like to say in my past life, I was a textile designer and carpet designer for 20 years. In New York City. So my background is textile design. I'm formally trained in it. So these pieces have heavy texture in it because for me, I'm so used to seeing things in highs and lows that I cannot just do something flat. So that's the hard part for me. Obviously, I do adore color. I think that was one thing with me with color science. Being a textile designer, it's very particular and you have to be very on point with your colors and color matching and making sure that color all works together. So I enjoyed bringing it into these pieces because I think, you know, there's a way to have a beautiful, bright piece of artwork, but sometimes if the hue and the saturation is off just slightly, it's going to throw the whole piece off. This is a heavy acrylic that you don't have to add anything else to. So what's kind of special about this is that if I buy their clear version, I can then add my own acrylic paint colors into it and really like pinpoint the colors that I want to use. I don't have to use anything out of a tube. Nothing you see here is a color directly out of the tube. So, and then the next process is that on these pieces, I use actually a cake piping bags. I have a rare genetic disease where my limbs are all starting to cram up. So I can't hold a paintbrush anymore, but I can hold that cake piping bag and just push out the paint and still create. So it's like still creating and adapting, you know, and make it go forward. These are sculptural pieces. I love these sculptures. These two alone have won multiple awards, which I'm very proud of. This is probably one of my favorites. This is a wired frame with sheet lyrics from one of my grandparents' favorite operas. Yes, so La Donna Immobile. So Enrico Caruso was one of their favorite opera singers, and I would listen to their records all the time. So my grandmother recently passed in November, and I inherited the records. So I thought this is like an homage to how much they loved the opera and the music, the gardens they would have in their backyards, and just this whole beautiful piece of just like a cornucopia, because it reminded me of my grandparents and like the cornucopia of love they had. And that's like what the real riches in life is. So that's the story between this piece, and just having the florals feel like it's coming from their garden, and then having that sheet music, which was so incredibly personal to them. I know that my texture can get a little crazy for some people, and even someone who loves color, even my brain needs a break. This is kind of my minimalistic approach of bringing in my textures, but keeping it simple. Once again, from having the situation I have medically, I was able to create like my own paste in the back and then just create these beautiful textures using different tools. And then adding the gold leaf, I think, is what really makes it pop and add another dimension to it, because I can't just leave it plain white or beige. These two pieces were really lovely to make. To use, it was like a silver antique leaf that was applied to the base, and then making a wired structure to fall over it, and then plaster it so it almost feels like a piece of fabric caught in the wind at a moment. So it's like that one moment you have where it's like just like a picture perfect moment, and it just flows into each other. So I think that's really what's special about those. My grandmother's maiden name was Mafrisha. So it's Mafrisha 1, Mafrisha 2. And after she passed, I had a hard time using color. It was this very odd thing that happened where I felt like the color was ripped out of the room because I was with her when she passed. And it took me a while to like be able to start putting color back into my pieces. She loved gold, so I actually inherited this gold Mary medallion from her. So this is very, very important to me and my family. So I wanted to incorporate that in the pieces and just like, once again, just incorporate all these beautiful textures and these like clay flower pieces that I made. There's clay ribbon going through. So these two are like my feeling of her as she kind of like transcended into the next being. And then the blue pieces I named Savario. I know I'm butchering it probably. It was my great uncle Sammy's actual birth name, but we never called him Savario, we called him Sammy. And it was my Nana's brother who lived to 98. My Nana lived to 99, so obviously good genes on that side. And once again, like she just loved and appreciated him so much and missed him so much, like kind of made these pieces that I know that they're finally together again. She's with my grandfather, she's with her brother and everybody, so it was kind of that feeling of just the organic feeling of flow and motion.
My name is Dana Nager-Lagos. I have been a goldsmith and a silversmith since 1989. Went to Parsons, and in the last 2.5 years, I decided to do welding, and there's not many of us out there, so I do plasma cutting and welding. And all these pieces are hand cut with a gun with air and electric, and each line is cut by blowing the electric through the steel, called plasma cutting. Some of the layers are triple layered, put some bronze on it, copper layer. I like to do a little bit of the jewelry aspect of it. So adding bronze, brazing, really brings it out. Heat treatments, making them different colors.
I draw in Sharpie marker, mostly. And then this color, it's watercolor pens. This body of work is probably about the last 6 to 8 years, and then I've been doing other things forever. So I got my Bachelor in Fine Art from SUNY Purchase about 20 years back, and then even before then, just forever. This is part of a series I had done about different world afterlives, different religions, and just different beliefs. And then I have the rest of my work is just things that I like and exaggerated versions of things that I like or have seen in the public. Yeah. Thank you. There's 2,000 book titles on there. Yeah, all unique, in no order. I got a lot of help from social media. I put out some asks, what are your favorite books? So everyone who gave me their list got in here. I did the same for, there's a video store one over there, which reminded me of one that I used to go to in the 80s, And I had, the last artist in the lane, I had a big list, and I had people come up and write down their favorite movies from the 80s and earlier. And they all got in there. I like to be a little interactive.
So hello there, and welcome to Fantasy Art by Michael. This is my booth. I do a lot of fantasy art, like wizards, dragons, things of that nature, but I'm actually turning my fantasy art into a deck of oracle cards. So that's sort of like tarot, but oracle cards follow their own rules. And I feel like a lot of the oracle cards that are out there are very heavy on like just positivity and positive affirmations, but the tarot packs a punch. There's light and dark and balance there, and I'm trying to create an oracle deck that has that. So I'm pulling from mythology and fantasy at the same time, and I'm building, each painting will be a card in the deck, so it's one step at a time. And I also do birds, which I'm really excited about too, because a lot of the mythical creatures tend to be, winged in one way or another. So if I'm going to study something, I chose to study birds because it translates to the other half of what I'm doing.
Horse on fire. What's going on?
Yes, that's actually my newest painting. That is called a nightmare. And why do we call them nightmares instead of bad dreams? This creature is actually called a nightmare because it's a horse that would visit in the nighttime and bring bad dreams, and we ultimately started calling them nightmares. So that is actually a very popular mythical creature. You'll see its appearances in games like Final Fantasy, Dungeons & Dragons, things of that nature, but it is actually from mythology.
Do we have a witch over here?
Yes, absolutely. Dark sorceress. I mean, what fantasy story is complete with that one, right?
That's right.
And then there's some Greek mythology over here, a lot of that. This is Thanatos from Greek mythology. He's the god of gentle death. And then we have the harpy, the minotaur, and of course Medusa, because her story is very sad and very, unfortunately, still relevant all these years later, but there it is. Something I definitely recommend studying up on.
This painting is more traditional.
Yes.
Yeah, flower or the figure and the sculpture, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Run Walk.
Right.
And then this is kind of funny. This is a
Yeah,
different play.
Mona Lisa with a star.
A sloth.
So that's because all my painting have some background. That's for CNN 1 year, the hero, the woman, she take care of the star. So I just paint the Mona Lisa with the animal. Yeah.
Very interesting. And
Yeah, and that's the Mona Lisa. So this other art is Carol. Frida Kahlo.
Frida,
She is a
yes.
very famous Mexican artist.
Yes.
She was
very hard life.
yeah, only 39 years old, and
Yes.
but last year she was one small portrait, and auction is 290 million, 29 million, highest South American artist. Yeah.
Wow, that's just incredible.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And what about this?
This is all imagination. Yeah. I would say whole life.
Whole life.
Yeah, started 6 years old. I'm interested in do some of the painting. Then I went to school, then went to college, went to 4 different art college in Taiwan and Japan. Yeah. Then came to New York, whole life in New York,
Very good.
in city. Yeah.